My name is Jocelyn Reed, and I'm 30 years old. I came back to Nashville for my dad's 60th birthday, expecting a warm family reunion filled with laughter memories, and maybe even a sense of healing. Instead, I was humiliated in front of everyone. Picture the scene: a lively backyard party, string lights glowing like fireflies, the smell of barbecue in the air, and guests chatting cheerfully with glasses clinking. I had spent hours carefully folding and decorating a small handmade paper gift box, something simple but deeply meaningful, holding a surprise I truly believed could change my family's future forever. When I handed it to my dad, I smiled, hoping he would see the love and thought behind it. But then my sister suddenly snatched it from his hands, holding it up as if it were garbage before tossing it carelessly across the lawn. "What's this, Jocelyn? Another cheapskate move?" She sneered, her voice loud enough for every guest to hear. The crowd froze. Heat rushed to my cheeks, but I stood there in silence while she laughed loudly with her boyfriend, mocking my pathetic gift. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some people chuckled under their breath. Others avoided looking at me. 15 minutes later, when that little box was finally opened, my sister's smug grin melted into shock. She wished she could take back every cruel word. And what was inside? Let's just say it turned the entire party upside down, and not in the way she ever expected. What do you think matters more, the price of a gift or the heart behind it? Let me know in the comments. 4 years ago, I left Nashville for Tokyo, chasing a job in tech that sounded like a long shot. I was 26, fresh out of grad school, with a suitcase and a vague plan. My sister Kelly thought I was crazy, said I'd crash and burn. She wasn't wrong to doubt me. Tokyo was brutal at first. The language barrier hit hard, and I spent months fumbling through meetings feeling like an outsider. But I stuck with it, coding late nights, pitching ideas no one asked for. By year 2, I'd landed a role at a startup that exploded into a multi-billion-dollar company. My stock options piled up, turning into tens of millions of dollars, enough to never worry about money again. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. I kept my old jeans, my beat-up laptop, and rented a tiny apartment. Why? I didn't want people to see dollar signs when they looked at me. I wanted real connections, not ones built on what I could buy. Coming back to Nashville, I had one goal: share my wealth with my family. I poured my heart into a small paper gift box, tucking the trust papers inside. It wasn't flashy, but it meant everything to me. I couldn't wait to see my dad Alan and my mom Susan open it at his birthday party. I imagined their relief, maybe even pride. But Kelly had other ideas. I got into town a few days early, renting a basic sedan to keep things low-key. Kelly picked me up from the airport, her shiny new BMW gleaming under the Tennessee sun. She wore a designer jacket, a handbag dangling from her arm that probably cost more than my rent in Tokyo. "Still driving rentals, Jocelyn," she said, smirking as she tossed my duffel bag in her trunk. I shrugged it off, hoping we'd reconnect. Over coffee the next day, she kept dropping hints about her life with her boyfriend Matthew. They'd just bought a condo, she said, flashing pictures of marble countertops and a rooftop pool. "You should visit," she added, her tone implying I couldn't afford a place like that. I sipped my coffee, biting my tongue. She didn't ask about Tokyo, just rambled about her latest shopping spree. The day before Dad's party, we met at their house for dinner. Kelly showed up in a silk dress, Matthew trailing behind in a tailored suit. He barely acknowledged me, too busy checking his phone. "You still doing that computer stuff?" Kelly asked, her voice dripping with pity. I nodded, keeping it vague. "Must be tough," she said, glancing at my plain sweater and sneakers. "Not everyone can keep up with Nashville's scene." Mom tried to change the subject, asking about my flight, but Kelly cut in, bragging about a new watch Matthew got her. It was clear she thought I was struggling, maybe even jealous of her flashy life. I let her assume whatever she wanted. The truth was, I didn't need a designer bag to feel good about myself. My worth wasn't in what I wore. It was in what I'd built and what I planned to give. That night, lying in my old bedroom, I thought about the gift box sitting in my suitcase. It wasn't just money, it was security for Dad and Mom, a chance for Kelly to chase her own dreams without leaning on Matthew. I pictured her face when she saw the trust papers, hoping it'd bridge the gap between us. We'd always been different, she loved the spotlight. I stayed in the shadows. But I believed family could outweigh that. I didn't know then how wrong I was, how her words would cut deeper than I could imagine. But that's what happens when you assume someone values the same things you do. The party was set for tomorrow, and I just wanted to show up simply as myself. No masks, no pretenses, nothing to hide. The evening of Dad's 60th birthday arrived, and I stepped into the backyard of his Nashville house clutching the small paper gift box I'd made. The space was cozy with picnic tables covered in checkered cloths and a few lanterns casting a warm glow. Guests mingled, sipping lemonade and beer, their chatter blending with soft country music from a portable speaker. I'd spent hours folding that box, knowing they held a future free of financial stress for my family. I wasn't ready to share what it meant yet, wanting the moment to feel right. But as I scanned the crowd, I felt a knot in my stomach. Kelly was already holding court, her laughter sharp and commanding. I approached the gift table, setting my box next to a stack of brightly wrapped packages. Kelly spotted me, her eyes narrowing as she sauntered over with Matthew trailing behind. She wore a sequined dress that caught the light, while he sported a flashy watch and a smirk. "What's that?" Jocelyn, Kelly asked, picking up my box like it was a toy. "Did you make this in art class?" Her tone was light, but the jab landed hard. A few guests nearby chuckled, glancing my way. Matthew leaned in, inspecting the box. "Looks like something you'd find at a thrift store," he said, loud enough for others to hear. The words stung, but I forced a smile, brushing it off. Kelly's friend Cynthia pulled out her phone, aiming it at the box. "Oh, this is too good," she said, giggling as she started recording. "Kelly, show it off." Kelly held the box higher, turning it for the camera. "This is Jocelyn's big contribution," she announced, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "What even is this? A coupon for free hugs?" The crowd laughed louder, and I felt my cheeks flush. Cynthia kept filming, her fingers tapping to post the video online. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to snatch the box back. They didn't know what was inside, and I wasn't about to let their mockery ruin my plan. I turned away, spotting Mom and Dad near the grill. "Hey, Jocelyn," Mom called, waving me over. I joined them, grateful for the escape. Dad was flipping burgers, his apron stained with barbecue sauce. "You doing okay, kid?" he asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, not wanting to worry him. "Just happy to be here," I said, forcing cheer. Susan squeezed my arm, her eyes warm but tired. We talked about old birthdays, Dad's terrible fishing trips, anything to keep my mind off Kelly's taunts. But I could still hear her across the yard, her voice carrying as she showed off to more guests. "Jocelyn's always been practical," she said, the word laced with pity. Matthew chimed in. "Yeah, some people just don't aim high." Their words cut deeper than I expected, stirring a mix of anger and hurt. I stayed close to Mom and Dad, helping serve food and chatting with neighbors. But Kelly's presence loomed. Every time I glanced over, she was flaunting something: her earrings, her heels, her perfect life. Cynthia kept her phone out, capturing every moment like it was a reality show. I tried to focus on why I was there: to give my family something real, something lasting. The box sat quietly on the table, unnoticed by most, but it held everything I'd worked for. I told myself to stay calm, to wait for the right time. Kelly's words were just noise. They wouldn't change what I came to do. But Kelly wasn't done, and I could feel the tension building. I stood near Mom, passing out plates, trying to shake off the sting of earlier jabs. The gift table sat a few feet away, my small paper box nestled among shiny bags and ribbons. I kept glancing at it, knowing what it held, hoping Dad would open it soon. But then Kelly's voice cut through the chatter, sharp and commanding, pulling every eye in her direction. She strode toward the gift table, her sequined dress flashing under the lanterns. Matthew followed, his grin wide, like they were about to put on a show. Kelly snatched my box from the pile, holding it up like a trophy. Jocelyn, seriously. She called out, her voice loud enough to hush the crowd. This is your gift for Dad's big day. She shook the box, its lightweight drawing snickers from a few guests. Before I could respond, she tossed it across the lawn, the paper crumpling as it landed in the grass. Cheapskate move, Jocelyn, she said, her tone biting. Couldn't even spring for a real gift. The word cheapskate hit like a slap, echoing in the sudden silence. Faces turned toward me, some amused, others uncomfortable. Cynthia, phone in hand, was already live streaming, her camera trained on the box in the grass. This is gold, she laughed, panning to Kelly's triumphant smirk. Y'all, Jocelyn's out here with a dollar store special. The livestream chat lit up, comments rolling in, amplifying the humiliation. My heart pounded, my hands trembling as I stood frozen. Every instinct screamed to run, to grab the box and leave, but my feet wouldn't move. The weight of dozens of eyes pinned me in place, my throat tight with embarrassment. Dad stepped forward, his face stern. Kelly, that's enough. He said, his voice low but firm. He started toward the box, but Susan grabbed his arm. Kelly, apologize to your sister, she urged, her eyes darting between us. Kelly just laughed, brushing her hair back. Apologize for what, Mom? Jocelyn's the one who showed up with that. She gestured at the box, now scuffed and dirty. If she can't afford a decent gift, that's not my fault. Matthew nodded, crossing his arms. Some people just don't get it, he added, his voice smug. The crowd murmured, a mix of gasps and whispers, as Cynthia kept filming her phone, capturing every second. I stood there, the humiliation burning through me. My simple jeans and sweater felt like a spotlight marking me as the outsider Kelly painted me to be. I wanted to scream that the box wasn't what it seemed, that it held something bigger than any of them could imagine, but the words wouldn't come. I clenched my jaw, staring at the grass, refusing to let Kelly see me break. I'd worked too hard, come too far to let her words define me. Still, the shame was overwhelming, like a wave I couldn't swim out of. Every laugh, every glance felt like a knife twisting deeper. Dad and Susan tried again, their voices overlapping. Kelly, pick it up and say, sorry. Dad insisted, his tone sharper now. Susan stepped closer to me, her hand on my shoulder. Jocelyn, don't listen to her, she whispered, but her words barely registered. Kelly rolled her eyes, unfazed. Oh, please, Dad. She's fine. Maybe next time she'll actually try. The crowd shifted, some guests shaking their heads, others chuckling along with Kelly. Cynthia's live stream kept rolling, the comments piling up, each one a fresh jab I couldn't see but could feel. I stayed silent, my eyes locked on the box in the grass. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was my heart, my years of sacrifice, my hope for our family. Kelly's words couldn't change that, but they hurt all the same. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This wasn't over. I stood there, eyes fixed on my crumpled gift box lying in the grass, my heart racing from the sting of Kelly's words. Then a familiar figure stepped forward, my lawyer, Patricia, who I'd known since my days in Tokyo. She'd flown in for the party at my request, ready to help with the surprise I'd planned. With a calm, deliberate stride, she crossed the lawn, picked up the box, and brushed off the dirt. Jocelyn, she said, her voice steady. Mind if I take a look? I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Patricia opened the box, pulling out a folded document. She held it up, her eyes scanning the crowd. This is a trust agreement, she announced, her tone commanding attention. Jocelyn has set up a trust worth $20 million to clear her parents' debts and support her family, Alan, Susan, and Kelly. Gasps rippled through the guests. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, and Dad's eyes widened, his burger tongs frozen midair. Kelly's smirk vanished, her face paling as Patricia continued. This trust is meant to secure their future debts, paid homes, saved dreams, funded. The crowd leaned in, hanging on her every word. Patricia paused, flipping to the page listing the beneficiaries. She looked directly at Kelly, her expression unreadable. However, she said slowly, Jocelyn has the authority to amend the trust. Given recent behavior, she might reconsider who benefits. The words hung heavy like a storm cloud bursting. Guests turned to Kelly, their whispers sharp and accusing. Did she really say that about Jocelyn? One muttered. That's her sister, another hissed. Matthew shifted uncomfortably, his smug grin gone replaced by a nervous glance at Kelly. Cynthia, still live streaming, fumbled her phone, her eyes wide as the chat exploded with shocked emojis and comments. I stood silent, watching the shift unfold. Kelly's face crumpled, her confidence shattered. 20 million, she stammered, her voice barely audible. She looked at me, searching for something, denial maybe, or a sign I'd laugh it off. I didn't. The truth was out, and it wasn't the flashy reveal I'd imagined. It was raw, exposing not just my wealth, but the gap between me and Kelly. Patricia folded the document, tucking it back into the box. Jocelyn worked hard for this, she said, her voice firm. She wanted to share it with her family, but respect goes both ways. The crowd nodded, some glaring at Kelly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Mom stepped closer, her eyes misty. Jocelyn, is this true? She asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, managing a small smile. It's for you and Dad, I said softly. I wanted to make things easier. Dad put his arm around Mom, his face a mix of pride and shock. Kid, I had no idea, he said, his voice thick. The guests' murmurs grew louder, their tone shifting from amusement to outrage. She called her a cheapskate for that, a neighbor whispered. Unbelievable, another said, loud enough for Kelly to hear. Matthew edged away, his phone suddenly more interesting than the scene. Cynthia's live stream was now a wildfire, the video racking up views as strangers online piled on. This is insane, one comment read. Her sisters loaded, and she did that. Kelly's eyes darted to Cynthia, who looked panicked, realizing her video was turning against her friend. I didn't know, Cynthia mouthed. But Kelly just stared, her hands shaking. The crowd's judgment was palpable, their whispers like a chorus of disapproval. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I hadn't wanted it to go like this, but Kelly's actions had forced the truth into the open. Patricia handed me the box, her eyes steady. It's your call, Jocelyn, she said quietly but loud enough for those nearby to hear. I took the box, its weight heavier now, not with paper, but with the choice ahead. Kelly's eyes met mine, pleading, but I looked away. The party wasn't over, but the air had changed. Kelly stood a few feet away, her face a mix of panic and desperation. She pushed through the crowd, her heels sinking into the grass as she approached me. Jocelyn, wait, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I didn't mean it. I was just joking, you know that, right? Her eyes darted around, seeking allies, but the guests' faces were cold, their murmurs sharp with judgment. I looked at her, seeing the sister I'd hoped to reconnect with, but her words felt hollow. Joking, I said, my voice low but firm. Kelly, you've been tearing me down since I got back. That wasn't a joke, it was jealousy. Her mouth opened, then closed, her cheeks flushing. The crowd watched, some nodding in agreement, others whispering about her behavior. Please, Jocelyn, she said, stepping closer, her hands clasped. Don't take me out of the trust. I need this. We're family. Her voice cracked, but I saw the calculation in her eyes, the same look she'd had when she flaunted her wealth. I shook my head. Family doesn't humiliate each other for laughs, I said. You made your choice. Matthew, who'd been hovering nearby, saw his chance. He stepped forward, his smile forced like a salesman pitching a bad deal. Jocelyn, let's talk this out, he said, his tone slick. We could work together, maybe invest some of that trust money. No need to cut Kelly out. His eyes gleamed with opportunism, and I almost laughed. Work together? I said, my voice sharp. You stood there while she mocked me. I'm not interested. Matthew's face fell, and he backed off, muttering something about misunderstandings. The crowd's whispers grew louder, some guests shaking their heads at his audacity. Cynthia, still clutching her phone, looked frantic. Her livestream had exploded, racking up thousands of views in minutes. The comments were brutal, calling Kelly entitled "fake" a bully. She threw her sister's gift and called her cheap one Reed. "What a snake," another said. Cynthia tried to stop the video, fumbling with her phone, but it was too late. The internet had latched on, and Kelly's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. "I didn't know it'd go this far," Cynthia said, her voice shaky as she approached Kelly. "I thought it was funny." Kelly glared at her, her eyes wet with tears. "Funny?" she snapped. "You made me look like a fool." Cynthia shrank back, the crowd's disapproval now aimed at her too. Mom and Dad pushed through, their faces etched with concern. Susan reached for my hand, her touch warm. "Jocelyn, we're so grateful," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We had no idea you'd done something this big for us." Dad nodded, his eyes misty. "You've always been the quiet one, but this is incredible," he said. I smiled, my heart full despite the chaos. "I just wanted to take care of you and Mom," I said, glancing at them. "That's all that matters." I paused, my voice firming. "But Kelly's actions have consequences. I'm only supporting you two for now." Mom's face fell slightly, but she nodded, understanding. Dad squeezed my shoulder, his expression proud but heavy. The guests were still buzzing, some openly criticizing Kelly. "She had it coming," a neighbor muttered. "You don't treat family like that." Another said, loud enough for Kelly to hear. She stood frozen, her hands trembling, the weight of her mistake sinking in. Matthew edged toward the sidelines, his phone out again, probably checking the damage online. Cynthia tried to slip away, but eyes followed her, judging her role in the mess. The video was everywhere, now shared across platforms, each view chipping away at Kelly's carefully crafted image. I felt a pang of sadness. She was my sister after all, but her choices had built this moment, not mine. I turned to Patricia, who stood nearby, her calm presence grounding me. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded, her eyes steady. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. I looked at the crowd, then at Kelly, who was still staring at me, her face a mask of regret. I wasn't sure if it was genuine, but it didn't matter. I'd come to share something meaningful, and I wouldn't let her ruin that. I slipped away from the backyard, the hum of the party fading as I stepped into the cool Nashville night. My rental car was parked down the street, and I drove to my rented apartment, a small one-bedroom I'd picked for its simplicity. The weight of the evening clung to me, but I felt a strange calm. I'd come to share something meaningful, and I wasn't going to let Kelly's actions derail that. Sitting on the couch, I pulled out my phone and dialed Patricia. "It's time," I said. "Let's finalize the trust for Mom and Dad." She confirmed she'd start the paperwork to transfer the funds, enough to clear their debts and secure their future. "And Kelly?" Patricia asked, her tone neutral. I took a deep breath. "She's out," I said. "I'm done." My phone buzzed relentlessly as I spoke, Kelly's name flashing across the screen. Texts piled up. "Jocelyn, please, let's talk. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we meet?" Then voicemails, her voice shaky, begging for a chance to explain. I didn't listen past the first few seconds. Each message felt like a repeat of her backyard performance, too little, too late. I opened my contacts, found her number, and hit block. The silence that followed was a relief. I'd spent years building something to lift our family up, but Kelly had chosen to tear me down. That choice had consequences, and I wasn't going to bend. Next, I called Mom and Dad. Susan answered, her voice soft but steady. "Jocelyn, are you okay?" she asked. I smiled, picturing her in the kitchen, probably still in her apron. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "I just wanted you and Dad to know the trust is set. The money's coming to you both, your house, your bills all taken care of." Dad's voice came on gruff with emotion. "You didn't have to do this, kid," he said. "But we're so proud of you." I swallowed hard, my eyes stinging. "It's what I always wanted," I said. "Just for you two." I didn't mention Kelly, and they didn't ask. They knew where I stood. My phone pinged again, this time, a message from Cynthia. "Jocelyn, I'm so sorry," it read. I didn't mean for the video to blow up like this. Please forgive me. I stared at the words, remembering her laughter as she filmed her eagerness to boost Kelly's ego. She hadn't cared about the hurt she caused until it backfired. I didn't respond, just deleted the message. I wasn't in the mood for apologies that only came when the consequences hit. Cynthia's video was still spreading now, with hundreds of thousands of views. Social media was relentless posts and tweets tearing into Kelly, calling her ungrateful, cruel, a fake. Screenshots of the livestream popped up on local Nashville forums with comments like, "She humiliated her sister over a $20 million gift and lost her family and her reputation in one night." Kelly's carefully curated image was crumbling. I'd seen her Instagram before the party, glossy photos of her with Matthew, their condo, her designer bags. Now those posts were flooded with criticism. "You don't deserve a sister like Jocelyn," one read. "Hope the clout was worth it," another said. Matthew's accounts weren't spared either, with people tagging him as an enabler. I didn't check for long. Watching her world unravel wasn't as satisfying as I'd thought. It just felt empty. I'd wanted to share my success with her, to bridge the gap between us, but she'd burned that bridge herself. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling of my sparse apartment. The trust was in motion, Patricia handling the details. Mom and Dad would be okay, and that was enough. Kelly's messages were gone, her number blocked, her voice silenced in my life. I didn't know if she'd learn from this, if she'd ever see past her own pride. Maybe one day we'd talk again, but not now. I'd given enough. The morning brought a new chapter, and I was ready to move forward. Weeks had passed since the party, and I'd settled into a quiet routine in my Nashville apartment. My days were filled with coding for tech projects, my laptop glowing late into the night as I worked remotely for clients across the globe. The simplicity suited me: secondhand furniture, a coffee maker, a view of the city skyline through a small window. I didn't need flash to feel content. Every Sunday, I called Mom and Dad, their voices warm over the phone. "The house is paid off," Susan told me one evening, her tone lighter than I'd heard in years. "We're even planning a trip," Dad added, chuckling about a fishing cabin they'd always dreamed of renting. Knowing they were secure brought me a peace I couldn't put into words. Meanwhile, Kelly's life was unraveling in ways I hadn't anticipated. I didn't follow her online anymore, but snippets reached me through mutual acquaintances and news alerts. The video from the party had taken on a life of its own, racking up millions of views. Social media was unforgiving. People called her out for her cruelty, her posts buried under waves of criticism. Lost her sister, and her dignity. One comment read, "Friends she'd once bragged about had distanced themselves, unwilling to be tied to her tarnished image." Local Nashville gossip circles buzzed with stories of her being snubbed at events, her invitations drying up. The fallout wasn't just social. Word was Kelly was struggling financially, her lavish lifestyle crumbling without the trust funds she'd counted on. Then there was Matthew. I heard through a cousin that he'd left Kelly, packing up and moving out of their condo. Apparently, he'd been pitching business ideas to anyone who'd listen, trying to leverage Kelly's connections, but her ruined reputation dragged him down too. "He's gone," Susan mentioned during one call, her voice tinged with pity. "Left her with nothing but bills." I nodded silently, unsurprised. Matthew had always chased status, and Kelly was no longer a ticket to it. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet sadness for the sister I'd once hoped to share this with. Her choices had built this mess, not mine. I thought a lot about what had happened, especially late at night when the city was quiet. The trust I'd set up for Mom and Dad was my way of showing love, not proving a point. I'd never wanted to flaunt my wealth like Kelly did with her designer bags and staged photos. That life felt empty to me, a chase for approval that never lasted. What mattered was honesty, being true to who you are, not what you can show off. I'd learned that in Tokyo, working long hours to build something real, and I carried it with me. The party had tested that belief, but I'd come out stronger, certain I'd made the right call by keeping my success under wraps until it mattered. Sometimes I'd check my phone expecting another message from Cynthia, but none came after her initial apology. I hadn't responded, and I didn't plan to. Her role in amplifying the drama wasn't something I could brush off even if she regretted it. The internet hadn't forgotten either. Her profiles were quieter now, her follower count dropping as people tied her to Kelly's downfall. I didn't dwell on it. My focus was forward projects, calls with mom and dad, maybe a weekend hike in the Smoky Mountains. I'd built a life that felt authentic, and that was enough. Kelly's name still popped up in passing local news mentioning her failed attempts to salvage her image, or a friend forwarding a meme about the cheapskate incident. Each time I felt a pang, but let it go. I'd given her a chance, and she'd chosen to burn that bridge. Maybe one day she'd see what really mattered, but that wasn't my burden to carry. I looked out my window, the Nashville lights twinkling below. My life was simple, but it was mine, built on choices I could stand by. The future was open, and I was ready to write it my way.